Welcome to the Clear Brand Academy podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. I'm your host, Alexander Toth. Today we have Peter Lynch with Unshakable Coaching. He is known as the coach of coaches, and he helps high achievers take the next step into their next level of success. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So my first question is about this coach of coaches and Unshakable Coaching. Tell me, first off, where does Unshakable Coaching come from?
Unshakable coaching comes from the concept of, it really has everything to do with confidence. I love the word confidence. I've struggled a lot with confidence myself. I see confidence as really a prime struggle when it comes to stepping into your potential, your success, right? A lot of us are limited or inhibited by our own limitations, imposter syndrome, et cetera, the limiting beliefs that hold us back, that invisible ceiling that we come up against that becomes a ceiling of the success in business when there doesn't seem to even be a practical reason for it, right? The systems might be in line, the marketing might be going, and all of a sudden you're just up against something and you're sabotaging yourself. So confidence is really that unshakable means coming back to a place where you're grounded. You're on a foundation of who you are. Because confidence isn't developed by trying to become something that you're not. Confidence breakthrough doesn't come from standing in front of the mirror and pretending that you're confident, or standing in front of the mirror and reciting affirmations that I can break through. It really comes through going deep within yourself, resolving the inner conflict, healing the root, fixing the foundation, and rebuilding from there. So Unshakable just references all of that work, that diving deep to where you find the bedrock and building from that bedrock of who you are so that you can achieve the success in life that is meant for you, that you are meant for.
I love that. And I think in marketing, one of the things that I push my team to do is to say things that have a deep meaning. And a lot of times where writers, I've done this I've seen this a lot on websites that I've reviewed or audited. Mm-hmm. People put fluff, the fill in the blank that you can trust. That applies to anybody. I want to know more. Tell me more. Right. And I love that about Unshakable. That to me it's layers down. It's not just the coach you can trust or become someone who's confident. Like, okay, great. Let's go further than that. And Unshakable to me cuts straight to the core of what we're talking about. It's I want to feel unshakable. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And to that point too, leverage points, like if you ever play, so I grew up in Ukraine, and there's a former Soviet Union. A bunch of playgrounds over there that are kind of dilapidated. Look back on, probably pretty dangerous. I'm surprised it didn't have tetanus and maybe other lacerations, who knows what. But still, so they have these merry-go-rounds that instead of being kind of, what you find here, which is usually a big disc. And you sit on the disc and there's lots of hand holds and all this stuff. And it's, it's pretty safe, Even found one the other day traveling with the family, and it was actually embedded. It was really cool design, embedded at the same level as the playground. So you went right from kind of the spongy turf of the playground right onto this thing, and it just spun right into place. So really cool.
Anyway, you can't even fall off.
No, you can't even fall off. I mean, you just fall onto a sponge, basically. Well, not in Ukraine. It's like broken asphalt, metal rod going into the ground, a spoke, and basically off that, a bunch of spokes with like these, just... like bad high chair seats. Okay. So basically you death strap yourself into these seats on the end of a metal spoke that's sitting on this rusted spoke in the center. Anyway, so the thing I learned though as a kid, pushing other kids in that, is when you stood far out, you had to run really fast and the thing spun as fast as you were. But if you stood right in at the center, the kids out on the edge spun way faster than you were actually running. And so I'll bring that up. It's just a vector, right? When it's going deep. I'm going to blame you for this. You talked about going deep, and it reminds me of this. So it's really just me. As I warned you before, this is how I go once the interview starts. But when we go down deep enough, you can make a 1 degree shift way down here, and it has a huge result up here. But if you're sitting on the surface, you have to exert exponential effort, massive action, And I think we've all heard that term in the motivational world. Yes, you need massive action if you're going to sit at the surface level. If you want to go an inch deep, you got to take massive action to get anywhere. And you're just going to burn out and be exhausted before any lasting change happens. So drink a Red Bull, get a high, crash. Drink a Red Bull, get a high, crash. Unshakable is about going down so deep that you can make a 1 degree shift and it has exponential results on the surface. Until you're that kid.
I love that mental picture. It took me a second as to see where we were going, but I can see that now, being on the inside of this spoken wheel picture. You don't have, you can, if you exert the level of effort that you would have on the outside of the wheel, it's so much more impactful.
Yes. Can even be impactful to the back of your head, as I found one time.
Oh, I bet. On another note. Which has its own load of lessons there. Before we got started, we were talking about this coach of coaches and your passion for entrepreneurs. Tell me more about this.
I just see entrepreneurs as entrepreneurship is the unique vehicle for transformation in communities. Entrepreneurs oftentimes don't realize the role that they fill in a communal structure, in a communal ecosystem, as it were. Because as entrepreneurs who create opportunity. Because the entrepreneur is somebody who's taking on the vision, right? They're pursuing their dream. And that's really what I'm passionate about, is supporting people in the pursuit of their dream. Supporting people in the pursuit of their passion. And if we look at the meaning of the word passion, if you're a passionate, passion means willing to suffer. So if you're passionate about something, you're willing to suffer for it, right? Entrepreneur, it comes from French root, it means he who bears the weight. So you're a passionate entrepreneur, you're willing to suffer and carry the weight of what? You don't just do that because, wow, I want to drop ship and make money in my underwear in my mom's basement while I eat, Pop-Tarts. It's like, well, no, it's because I actually care about the impact, the change that I'm making in the world, realizing something, which is it's like conceptualizing, realization, etc. Those words have everything to do with something going from intangible, unknown to known, which means that others get to experience it. It matters, which means it materializes, right? If it matters to you, you're making it matter in the world, which means it becomes matter in a way that other people can experience it, even if it's just a thought leadership, like other coaches. But so whether it's entrepreneurs with a more typical business, or whether it's other coaches who have a passion, have a burning desire to make an impact and change the lives of others, improve the lives of others, my passion is to see them succeed in the pursuit of that dream, of that passion. That I know it's one of the things that I say is, like, if you don't chase your dream, the ghost of your dream haunts you. And I've lived that experience. I just want to eliminate that experience from others, because there's nothing worse than getting to the end of the day. So I can't imagine, the last thing I want is to get to the end of my life and just regret all the potential that I left on the table because I was not willing to chase my dream, because I was succumbing to my own limitations, right? So you have to have a pragmatic way of moving beyond your limitations so that you can realize that dream.
I love this. And one of the things I'm hearing here is, such an alignment. We've been talking for a while before we set this up, and you've been helping us with a few things, and we've been having some really great conversations. Our mission is actually rooted in that exact same why. For us, we believe entrepreneurs and small businesses change the world.
Absolutely.
But they're held up by not being able to do marketing well often, or not having the time. And so we've both got this same why here, entrepreneurs changing the world. And you're approaching this with, well, people are getting in their own way. How do I help them get out of their own way and reach that next level of success, if I'm hearing you right? And then we're just approaching it with, hey, let's marketing can often be a problem as well.
Right.
I think it's great that such a similar why can have so many different things that play into reaching that level of success.
It is. It's fascinating. And so once again, a spoke is another good analogy, right? The why is almost the center, but that wheel doesn't work very well without all the spokes that reach out and fulfill the different roles and needs that are necessary. Excuse me. There's a saying that, like, mindset is everything, popular in kind of my world, in the coaching world. Mindset's everything. And I think, and it's nothing without focused action. And it's nothing without good sales and marketing, So we can sit there and say marketing is everything. And sure, that's a nice catchphrase to sell mindset coaching. But at the end of the day, it's only a piece of the whole. And so there's a holistic side of this that needs to be developed. And so I'm passionate about mindset and the inner development. But I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's everything, because nothing is everything, and
nothing's everything.
Yeah.
Everything has so many complexities and facets to it. I think even your approach to the word passion, if passion means happiness, which I think is how a lot of people think about it. Oh, I want to go have a job that I'm passionate about. They're not thinking about suffering. They're thinking about their own happiness.
Right.
But if we change that definition to what you just said, where passion means you're willing to suffer for it, that is something that a person will take focused action to bring into the world.
Absolutely.
I mean, that to me is real passion.
Absolutely. And there's no need for motivation. It's actually fascinating, because you're the one who turned me on to the book. Finally, I've heard about it so many times, but Good to Great. And Jim Collins talks about this. You don't need motivation if you have the right people.
No.
And that fits right into what we're saying here. But it can be reversed, because a lot of times the people are worried about their motivation. You don't need motivation if you have the right purpose. Oftentimes you're trying to achieve a purpose that's not yours. And so, you're going to need a lot of motivation to achieve that purpose, because it's not right for you. You're going to be working against yourself. And when you're working against yourself, you're out of confidence. Confidence, confide, means knowledge. So if you don't have self-confidence, it means you don't know yourself. You don't know what your purpose is. You don't know what your gifts are. You're just trying to be like somebody else and trying to fulfill their purpose because that inspired you in the moment, but it's not really it all is a process of coming back to grounding, to that deep bedrock of who are you? What is your purpose? You're aligned with that. You don't need motivation. Right.
And asking, what are you willing to suffer for?
Yes.
It's such a simple question compared to what are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? It's just foggy. But what am I willing to suffer for? That's much more clear.
So I mean, the example that came to mind was surfing. I love surfing. I'm not passionate about surfing. I've met guys who are passionate about surfing, and they suffer for their surfing. Most people are not passionate about surfing, but those that are, they're a rare breed, and they're incredible. They take surfing to an art. Whereas for me, it's a hobby. I love the experience. I really, really love it, but I'm not here to suffer for that.
Yeah. That's interesting. I have a personal philosophy that we choose our suffering. We do not have an option about whether we will suffer. We do have the choice about how we will suffer or what we will suffer for, which, I mean, this also, I think, greatly clarifies many decisions in life to approach it this way. I am going to suffer whether I choose this A or B. Which type of suffering do I want in this case?
So good.
Buying a new car, suffering financially, or I'm suffering by driving an old car, right? Either way, there's a level of suffering there. To me, asking the question that way, not what do I want, but which type of suffering would I prefer, really makes decisions easy. A lot of decisions, at least.
I just lost it. It had a whole train wreck of thoughts as you were talking there. But I was just going to underline what you just said because it's so spot on. It's just if you're not, that was it. Happiness and fulfillment. A lot of people want happiness, but the problem is if you're not careful, you'll trade fulfillment for happiness. As in, another way of saying that is that you'll trade long-term satisfaction for short-term gratification.
Right.
Long-term satisfaction is where you find fulfillment, but that is only found in the process of suffering. Suffering guides you to fulfillment, which is a lasting happiness. It's not that you're not meant to be, life is suffering. It doesn't mean there's not happiness. But the idea that we can eliminate suffering will only lead you to suffer greatly and pointlessly because you're suffering trying to accomplish something that is false. And it's one of my biggest issues with the whole New Thought movement is that they think they can think their way out of suffering. And it's nonsense. You will never think your way out of suffering. But when you find what is worthy of suffering for, you find your own worth in the process as well.
Yeah.
Right? If you have nothing worth suffering for, you will struggle with your own sense of worth because you're not because you want meaning in life. Meaning is found in the suffering. You give meaning to life by what you apply your energy to, your effort to, your life to, and your life is suffering. So what are you suffering for? What are you suffering to bring into existence, right? To make incarnate, right? Because we have the conception of these ideas, these visions, these dreams. And most people are, it's funny, like taking my family traveling, as you know, and run into so many people that say, oh, we do that, but, and it's like, okay, if you don't want to, that's fine. But don't say, oh, I do that, except excuse.
Right.
Just choose what you're going to do and just do that, and stop living a duality of, well, I'm doing this, but I don't like it. I'd really rather than do that or do this, suffer for something, but stop suffering for nothing, because it's just, that's the recipe for burnout. But more than that is a deep sense of dissatisfaction, frustration, and victimhood in life. And that's one of the key things. Is a lot of people are, a lot of times what we really uncover in my coaching process is victimhood. What are you a victim to? Right. We all are a victim to something at this moment. And if you're not willing to look in the mirror and identify what that is, you will never move past it.
Yeah, I'm reading the Daily Stoic right now, which it's really just a greatest hits of Stoic-like quotes.
Right.
Yeah. The quotes at the beginning of each day are really incredible. I've got a Kindle, and I like to, I'll highlight, and then I'll go into you can go into the notes. I think it's like notes.amazon.com or something, and you can look at everything that you highlighted.
Oh, cool.
And I'll use this to review the parts of books that I really loved. And I found myself highlighting almost all of these quotes. But one of them that I came across recently, and I'm fairly certain it was Epictetus, might have been Seneca. Basically, the quote was something along the lines of, "Why are you complaining? This is what you're here for." And Ryan Holiday wrote, he put these together. He has little thoughts on them, and basically he was saying this applies to everything. Your job. Why are you complaining? This is what you're here for. This is your job. But even outside of work, our job is to be a great human.
Right.
And so part of that, I think, is suffering well.
Yes.
And part of being a human, I think our lives right now are very insulated. We're going to get to coaching eventually. I just love the conversation.
Coaching is all in the mix of this.
Yeah. I think our lives are so insulated right now. Even, walking outside and feeling the wind makes me think about how much we've insulated ourselves from suffering. Suffering is part of the human experience. And I think part of being a great human is living through that well, using it to grow. We used to be walking everywhere, 4 or 5 hours a day. We're walking, in the wind, in the sun.
Yes.
And that was life. And now we're working from home. We don't even need to walk outside for anything. We don't feel the wind. We're not in the sun, just a whole different world right now.
And the health issues that arise with it,
Yeah. And I think also the mental things as well. I've started, I've experimented with different times to work out. I'm a chronic skinny guy where my body does not want to gain weight no matter what I do.
Interesting.
There has been 1 2-month period in my whole life. There was 1 2-month period where I gained some weight and some muscle. And I'm now recreating that. But I've experimented over the years with different times of day to work out and different types of workouts to do. And right now I'm loving working out in the morning so that I can start my day by pushing myself past these internal blockers. Physically just, my body wants me to stop. I'm going to keep going. That having that moment in the morning where I push past that has changed my mindset for the rest of my day. I can do this thing that, I was going to end my day, but I'm going to finish this one thing first because I'm just going to push past. I'm just going to go to that next level of limits.
That becomes the adoption of a new identity.
It does.
I'm somebody who pushes past rather than I am somebody who succumbs.
Absolutely.
Right. And yeah. And Yeah, it's fascinating because identity becomes, so Carl Jung has a quote I love: the future self reflects upon the present self. And there's a lot that goes into that, even into the ideas of the unconscious and the superconscious and all these kind of things. But the main thing that really sunk home for me with that is that time converges on the present moment, and we see this in a lot of the spiritual, teachings and writings that that we in our tradition too. And it's just like that, their eternity converges in the moment. The moment is all that we really have. In the moment, we determine what that future self is. In the moment, I determine that my future self, right? I am becoming somebody who, for instance, pushes beyond things and achieves this.
Yeah.
That's the power of goal setting, right? Of in a simplistic way, but I believe also I think when you get simple, you're getting somewhere deeper. Over complexity just convolutes and diffuses the power of things. So goal setting really is just about a way of anchoring in, who am I going to become? What is my future self? Am I more fit? Am I more right? Am I making more money? Am I growing? What am I looking to accomplish? Who is that future self? And the beauty of it is, in the moment, I am determining that future self, and that future self is altering who I am in the moment, because I'm changing the course, the direction of my entire life just in that moment. It's like driving a boat. You make micro corrections with the wheel, and boats are different than cars. You make a little adjustment and you think, oh, not much is happening. And then all of a sudden you're turning completely 90 degrees. It's really interesting. Right. So anyway, it's just, we make these micro adjustments, and they lead to, in the moment is when we determine that future self, and that future self alters who we are, even in the moment and continuing forward.
I love that. I don't want to go too far into that, because I'm already, my brain's pounding with these connections here. But just our future self impacting our current self, and our current self becoming our future self. That's incredible. Well, let's get into coaching a little bit.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell me how you view coaching? What is coaching, and why is it important?
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, and just for the sake of our listeners who are like, that's a dumb question.
No, it's a great question.
We all know that having a coach is, paying someone to help you reach that next level. But before the call, we were kind of talking about where we were going to go with this conversation. And I had said, I kind of see coaching as threading the needle between DIYing it and making all of your own mistakes, getting it wrong for a long time while you figure out how to do it, and paying someone else to do it for you. You're in the middle where you're basically paying to learn from someone else's mistakes. Now, I know that you had a lot of thoughts about this, so why don't you jump in there?
Okay, but yeah, coaching has, there's applications. So there's different types of there's different realms that we might be coaching in. But there is a foundational belief from me about coaching, and I'll just start with, again, a Latin root of the word education is educo. The Latin root of the word education is educo, and it means to educe from within. That for me is the bedrock of how to approach coaching. And you'll see.
Let me pause you there. To induce from within.
Educe from within.
To educe from within.
Yes. That holds a presupposition. So say we're talking about education. Classically, we think of children, probably. I mean, if you're like me, you think like, okay, we're thinking about kids in grade school, education, right? Or maybe college. Either way. Education, educo, the root of that word means to educe from within. If we look at the way most of us have been educated, we've all been kind of with this pedantic thing. Somebody is the instructor, and they stand at the front of the room and they preach at you, or they teach at you, and they tell you, here's what is right, here's what is true, here's what you do to get your good grades. Then you check your boxes, play the game, and you get a degree. You
memorize. That's our current definition of education, is I'm going to memorize, I'm going to regurgitate what someone else told me.
You're right. For what end? Why?
Right.
Why is not asked. That's the interesting side note too, or undernote really. Why is not asked. Why am I doing this? I asked that question too much, and I just kicked myself right out.
Yeah. I want to share a quick study, and I'm so sorry to
No,
I want to let you finish your thought, but I'm still stuck on this to reduce from within. There was a study on birds that I came across. I read studies all the time. I love research. I love data.
I know.
There was
a
study
I love
on
hearing
birds.
it from you so that I don't have to read it.
There you go. Yeah. So the study the idea was the researchers wanted to find out, well, we wanted to answer the question of nature versus nurture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this lifelong, we've been dealing with this question for decades, if not hundreds of thousands of years. But what they did is they took two different species of birds, and they took the eggs from one species while they were still eggs, and they replaced the eggs of the other species.
Okay.
And so the eggs hatched, and now species A is being raised by species B.
Interesting. Okay.
And they watched, well, what song is the bird going to sing? Is it going to sing the species A song or the species B song? This is going to help us solve nature versus nurture. Now, they had also left some of the eggs from species B with species B so that they could have a direct comparison.
Control. Yes.
And what they found is species A that was raised by species B took longer to sing anything as species B raised by species B or species A raised by species A. So they were silent for longer.
Wow.
And then they started to have a note here and there. And then they started to have more notes, but it wasn't a song yet. And over time, what they ended up doing was, as they heard a note from species B singing their songs, that aligned with a note from species A's songs, they started to piece them together. So they ended up singing their own song, the song of their species. They sang their own song, but they could not sing it until they had heard the notes sung by species B. So it's this odd mix where essentially what the researchers observed was they had to be activated. Each note had to be activated by hearing. So it was this internal thing. They didn't just sing the song that they heard growing up. They sung their own species song after each of the notes had been activated. And I mean, for me, I've always wondered, what are we born with? You know, there's certain things that my parents never taught me, but I just feel like it was in my DNA, you know? And so this study to me validated my own experience. But there's things that also means that there are things within my DNA that have not yet been activated because maybe I haven't experienced them.
Yes. Oh man, that is.
So this educe from within, it totally aligns with this, with this study as well.
So with that, we'll just use that bird study because that is fascinating. So this is where I have a different approach to coaching than your definition of threading the needle between those two things, right?
Okay.
DIY and done for you. It's because I don't think that anybody could sing that song for the bird, right?
Yeah.
The bird has to sing their own song, is my approach, or my take on that. Nobody can sing the song for the bird. Nobody can do it for them. Not that. They could do, nobody can fly for them.
Right.
They have to fly for themselves. So that's where I look at that. The value of coaching is just what you said. It's the unlocking the genetic potential. Really, to put it, in those terms, it's unlocking the potential that's already there. So that to educe from within is what speaks to that. It has the presupposition you already have everything you need within you to accomplish your unique purpose in this world, right? To achieve your goals that are right for you, not to try to create a system of achievement that sets you up to fail, right? I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with like 75 hard.
No.
Okay. It's this big thing that's the rage in a lot of personal development. It's started by, I won't say his name, but anyway, kind of a guy who's a big entrepreneur / motivation name. And he got all his buddies on the rage on the 75 hard thing. And it's just that 75 days of this stupid hard thing. You got to do two 2 workouts every day. You got to read like 10 pages of self-development. You have to pick a strict diet and there's a few other, things that go to it. And you have to do it every day for 75 days. And if you miss a day, you start over. So it's just this punitive system. If you break it down to what it is underneath it, it reminds me of a lot of the, a lot of the foundation of our American philosophy and approach to life is very punitive. It's very much grounded in this puritanical approach, which we kind of idealize in some way, or not so much now, but we're still living out the puritanical approach to life, which they carried over with them. This wacky little niche group of Christian expression that really kind of took over a lot of American Christian expression, which was based on this idea of sinners in the hands of an angry God, which if you break that down, you're unworthy. You're a piece of trash. You better prove your worth by doing really hard things, working really hard. And thus we get the Protestant work ethic. Don't think about it, just work it, and just try to desperately seek the affirmation of an unaffirming father. And if you look at just probably the family dynamics, we're probably pretty unhealthy, just based on all the study and research and experience I've had, within my own experience and the study of others. It's just like, well, we just play. And one of the classic things is to project our experience of our physical father onto the idea of God, right? Yeah. Whatever that idea is for different people, right? I mean, for me, it's very clear. But I know that for me, that was a massive struggle of faith for me, was this idea. So my whole worldview and my whole experience of life was colored and tainted by my viewpoint that the world, that I can't trust, because God doesn't have my best interests in mind. He's an unaffirming,
he doesn't even like me.
No, he doesn't even like me.
Right.
I'm just here as kind of basically a little puppet, a minion, a tool for his own gratification. And if I mess up, I get punished. But if I do well, I don't get anything. It was a really awful kind of experience, and obviously led me to not do very well. I mean, there's a lot of other layers to it. But what I'm getting at is just like, if that's the worldview, then of course you come up with something like 75 hard, and then hold yourself to a very punitive discipline that's just miserable. And at the end of the day, it just taps out your adrenals and actually sets you physically, health-wise, it sets you back. A lot of people think, oh, I lost weight, but then they regain the weight and more because they tapped out their adrenals. And
then you're on this yo-yo.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's like dieting yo-yo. Another classic example of motivation land and coaching, and a lot of coaching. Just do this diet. And that's why I have a huge aversion to anybody that comes in with a one size fits all. You want to get in shape? Do this thing. Yeah. PX90 or whatever that, Beachbody, all these kind of fads, and the South Beach diet and blah, blah, blah diet and this diet. And they're all coming through, and people are trying, and they're not finding their song. That's the thing. So the coach is not there to come in and say, do what I do. And that's a lot of the motivational speakers out there. Just say, hey, you want to be a success? Be like me. I'm an ideal person. If we're really just calling out kind of the message that's underneath it all, I am the ideal human. If you want to be an ideal human, be like me. Don't sing your song. Your song sucks. Sing my song. My song's great. It's like, wow.
Yeah. And if we all have this, our own song in our DNA that's waiting to be activated, it doesn't help us to walk around looking for someone to copy.
Right.
And I think just to go back to the Protestants for a second, I do think that most of modern Protestantism is currently responding to the sinners in the hands of an angry God. And they're recognizing how that has harmed not only themselves, but also some of the world's view of them. Right. So just to not to go down the religious path too far, but just to empathize with some of our listeners who've been there.
I didn't mean to make a blanket condemnation by any means. It's just always fascinating to trace the history. And like I said, it was a small pocket of expression, but it had a very large influence, especially in America. Because if you look at the Puritans were this small minority group, but they came over here and all of a sudden they had, and we have them to thank for certain of our liberties and freedoms. So I don't mean to throw the baby out with the bathwater with any of it. You get into history, you get into the human journey is always a mess. So, I'm just making observations, but thank you for bringing the context here.
What I'm hearing you say is this foundation of, no, you are worthy. You do have what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
How do we activate it rather than how do we make you worthy? If we take that question out, you don't have to be made worthy. You are. It changes the conversation.
Woo. Dramatically.
Yeah.
It sends chills down my spine every time.
Absolutely.
It's because that comes back to, so it is radically different than our typical experience of education. Once again, we're used to being taught what to think. Think this, do this, check the boxes, you get a reward. Yep. But with this, it's discover yourself. Whoa. How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I studied Greek philosophy in school. And this Plato, I've always loved this thought. I've never not really known what to do with it, but Plato talked about this as well. Plato, I can't remember in which of his dialogues it was, but he made the case that learning is actually remembering. We are remembering something that was within us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And whether, we're talking about all the complexities of life and the both and rather than the either or. I think that there's some of both. Clearly, it's possible to learn something that was not inside of you. But there is something to this activating what's there.
Mm-hmm. And it's because it's like in the presentation that we give when we talk about what ClearBrand can do for a business, right? The flywheel, the foundation, everything. And it's your point on that slide, right? About this structure gives space for the creativity. There's freedom within structure. And that's the interesting dynamic of this, is there needs to be a structure to education, right? There needs to be a structure of how do you educe, and that is really the structure of how do you coach. There has to be something there, some kind of foundation we can fall against so we can measure, because otherwise we're just dropping people into a void and saying, good luck, discover yourself. What do I do, right? Give me a canvas to paint on and I'll paint. But if you're just like, paint, what?
Yeah.
Where?
And there is a right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely also gray area, and there are some things that aren't right and wrong, that don't have a right and wrong, but there are things that are right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 3 years after I started ClearBrand, I made a few decisions and realized I could have started my business right here. I have taken 3 years to learn this. And if I had known what I know now, I could have started my business where I am right now. I could have skipped these first 3 years. And that was revolutionary to me. And that's where I really started. I've never really liked the idea of a coach, partly because of the way that the education system's set up. And I also did not thrive. I love learning, but I think I was a little bit turned off from being taught. But it was in that moment.
Excellent delineation. Yes.
It was in that moment where I realized I could have skipped the last 3 years. I could have started right here. But I once again saw the value, and especially saw the value of coaching. If I can find somebody who knows these things, that'd be helpful. So I want to go back, because this is where I've encouraged folks to find coaches. I've found coaches myself. I've been part of coaching groups. But for me, part of it is skipping the line.
Yes,
right. It is learning these things that really just take experience,
competitive
that
edge.
someone else has gone through. So you had said that you define coaching a little bit differently. So what parts? Help me understand a little bit more about this. What does it look like when you're going about coaching someone?
So to define a little more there, because I've seen coaching is kind of just used as a term when people say so let's say take a course one time. It's a DIY course, which I took. but they also had these coaching calls. So they were saying it's a mix of DIY and done for you, but we're coaching. So it's this mix, right? And I know this isn't what you meant when you said, but this is where my contention with that idea of this thing kind of being a catch between the two, because the coaching calls there wasn't really much coaching involved. It was just regurgitation of the same information. And so coaching for me has everything to do with application of information, which can only come with wisdom, which is knowledge times experience, to put it into a formula, right? Knowledge times experience equals wisdom. It's the knowledge that you've tested through and tried and applied in your own life, and then it becomes wisdom because you know how it applies. Information from a textbook, well, so what? It's like what we experience with, clients for ClearBrand. It's like, well, great, I read the book, but I still don't know how to formulate my own message. Well, that's why we do what we do, right?
Yes.
It's because at a certain, and that one is it's interesting because that is a bit of done with you, but mostly done for you with the way the structure is, right? Because there
with
are
our structure.
Yes. Because there's some calls to educe that message.
Yeah.
Right. And then to take it and iterate it into a proven system, right? A story brand copywriting system, to use this as the example, right? But there's that starting point of education, educing. Actually, education is almost a reverse education. Being educated, what is the message, which can only come from the person who carries that message, like a seed latent within them that needs water to sprout. Absolutely. And sometimes some seeds need fire and water.
And I just want to define this for folks who maybe haven't experienced our processes. So the way that we work, I'm a StoryBrand certified guide, and we do help people apply StoryBrand. That's part of our process. We offer services where we'll come in and create the message for you. But we don't just do it for you. We start off with having the client fill out a form where they get to brainstorm, they get to put their thoughts on paper. And then we have a conversation about that. And this is that educing. We're asking them questions that reveal certain things about their message and the way that they've been carrying that already. And then we go craft it with our copywriters who have professional copywriting training. So now they're going to take these feelings and ideas and experiences and we're going to turn them into a very clear message. And then we go back after this person's read that and thought about it for a few days and brainstormed, and we've planted the seeds and we've seen what happens with it, and we have another conversation. And so this is how we've taken, the teaching that StoryBrand does, which is great teaching, but it doesn't leave room for things like brainstorming, and it doesn't leave room for lots of outside input. You can't make somebody a professional copywriter just from, reading a book.
No,
and so we're combining this person's experience with systems that we've found get to a fantastic message, honestly, 100% of the time. But then we don't believe in the silver bullet. So we test it, we iterate, we figure out what needs to be tweaked here because we're not trying to, at the end of the day, we're not trying to connect with the owner of the company. We're trying to connect with the customers of the company.
Right.
And so if the owner uses slightly different language, we actually need to be using the customer's language.
Exactly.
So we go out and we test this, right? We start with the owner, their experience, we educe, and then we're going to test this in the marketplace and make sure that the message lines up with what the customers are looking for. So there's a little bit of insight into the processes that Peter was just talking about, but I think that you're right. A core piece of that is looking within them and finding what's there. And then we've built systems around validation, basically, is what the systems are for.
Yeah. And so, so another great example of like coaching, the effectiveness of coaching is somebody like Michael Jordan, right?
Okay.
And also just the validity of coaching. I mean, he had multiple coaches. Tiger Woods has multiple coaches for different aspects. And another interesting thing is don't get overlapping coaches, because then you're just getting overlapping opinions and you're going to get confused. You know, like find somebody you trust. So find somebody you resonate with in that area and stick with them. Because otherwise, if he had two coaches for his swing, he's just going to have a confused swing. He has one coach for his swing, Tiger Woods.
Right.
Right. But, and Michael Jordan too. But I mean, so Michael Jordan was a great example of somebody who had incredible natural gift and talent. But to unlock all that natural gift and talent, he had coaching. which had a process and a system behind it as well, which is where there's regimen, there's discipline. Coaching doesn't exist outside of discipline by any means. Finding your song, once again, it's like, well, there's laws of music, there's laws of physics. We operate in a world that is a structure, and yet there is chaos, and that's the yin and yang. So coaching is this interesting bridge between chaos and order, because it's trying to bring clarity to the chaos within the person. Really, if we're talking about personal coaching, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like there's nuances, of course, in because when it's business coaching, a lot of times it is just, man, I just need a system that works. Now, the prerequisite question before you do that is this the right business for you? Right? Now, if it is, then you probably just need and that's where franchises can be great. Or, making another plug here, but just come to Clear Brand and have a system for marketing that works, because it's proven. Right. It'll bring you the leads. But do you have a business that's right for you in the first place? Or are you trying to do something to achieve, oftentimes it's just like trying to, build a business in a certain sector or a certain type of business to receive because of childhood wounds of things like, and that's where, coaching gets honestly like complicated, is a lot of times we're just dealing with our childhood wounding of like, well, dad never affirmed me. Dad always said I wasn't good enough. So if I can just get this business
right.
big enough, he'll finally, even if he's dead, but the inner child is still taking the wheel. And that's where, when we talk about getting past your limitations, that's what we're really talking about, is those times where you're triggered. Trigger means the inner child takes the wheel. You're no longer your adult person. Now all of a sudden the emotional child within you takes over, and you're acting and you do things that you look back and you're like, why did I do that? Why did I say, I should have said this? I could have said this. I blah, blah, blah. But in the moment, I just cut myself down. I was sabotaged. Like for me, it used to be like any degree of conflict with men would send me into an emotional, like catatonic state, shut down. I was so afraid of confrontation with men because of just the issues that I had to resolve within myself. So anyway, a bit of a tangent as I'm saying all this, but this idea of coaching I think it really does. So I think there's a lot of validity. Like, I guess there's more agreement than not with your definition, because it does bridge these two. There's kind of chaos and order is my way of thinking of it, because you're trying to bring clarity to the chaos within the person and that's also oftentimes what an artist is doing, right? It's the conceptualizing of chaos into something. And then the poet is the one who comes next in that order, in that hierarchy of going from kind of complete chaos to complete order. And on the other side, you have the accountant, who's just, everything has its place, right? And the artist can never be the accountant, but there's this kind of place where a coach fits somewhere more on that side of being able to engage with chaos. And especially if it's a personal performance coach, like my realm, is really engaging with the chaos that wells up from within us, of all the things that we don't understand within ourselves that lead us to have experiences of self-sabotage, which really just come from a place of inner conflict, which is something that's unresolved. And that inner conflict is a schism or a void, right? It's something that's pulling apart, and that's a diffusion or a fission of our own internal energy, because we're spending a great deal of energy trying to resolve something that needs a click, and all of a sudden it fits. And that's where coaching can come into place. Not that I can't fix anything for someone else, but I can take them through a process where they can re-engage with their inner child and resolve the conflict that child is carrying, and move on all of a sudden. And it's just it's a massive worldview shift. And it happened for somebody, and I love it. And it's what I live for, is those moments. It happened for somebody just before I started this trip. So mid-May, just had this experience hosting a breakthrough workshop session. And it was this experience. Somebody's just been carrying something for decades.
And they were able to release it.
Yeah. And now what happens? His whole identity is reshifting and redeveloping. Right. And so that's another layer of fear to engage with. Yeah, if you've been stuck
and you suddenly get unstuck, I mean, there's a lot of, it's not that you're suddenly a new person. It's that now you're not stuck. And you're able to make progress that you hadn't been. That's incredible.
And it is a new identity, because then your identity is now somebody who is unstuck.
Right.
But that identity is often unacceptable to everybody who's known you as a stuck person. So that's part of the kickback you have to be prepared for. So that's part of the challenge for anybody that's interested in coaching. It's like, how are you willing to suffer for it? Right back to that. Are you willing to suffer for the potential person that you know you have within you?
Yeah.
And you're stuck right now? How much suffering are you willing to go through? Because my world has completely been shaken up, turned upside down, kicked around multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
So I know this journey inside out. Don't do it if you don't want to suffer.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah. Yeah. A quick, observation on that. Even small things. I started wearing sport jackets a few months ago, and a lot of folks were like, wow, why are you doing this? Or my glasses. My glasses are for indoor lighting, turns my brain off. So if I didn't have these orange glasses on right now, at this point, we're about 50 minutes into our conversation, I would be a pile of nothing. My brain would just be off. I wouldn't be able to have a conversation. So it's very important to me to be able to engage with folks. But when I started wearing them, it was the same thing. This big, why are you doing this? And those are really small changes compared to what you're talking about. So yes, absolutely. If you make some kind of big breakthrough and now you approach life differently, yeah, there's going to be this external pushback.
Hey, you were the bird who didn't sing. Now you've got a song. Who do you think you are to sing?
Exactly.
Oh, you think you can sing louder than me? You must think your song's better than me. And all of a sudden it goes to some weird places. You're like, no, I'm just singing, man.
I'm just doing what I could have been doing this whole time.
Finally enjoying who I am.
Yeah.
Why does that threaten you? And at the end of the day, you just can't be, you have to be be ready to just set other people's opinions aside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is, for me, has been really hard, albeit straight up honest. Like, that's been a big challenge for me. I'm very sensitive to how other people think and perceive me. So that's been a ride.
Yeah. I wonder about it being harder in some ways and easier in some ways also, though, because I was really nervous about wearing these glasses when I got them. I had these things these lenses custom made and all this stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And when I started wearing them, I was anticipating that pushback.
Yeah.
Almost no one has said anything. Almost no one, except for my team at Clear Brand, who have been concerned that maybe it distances me from our YouTube video viewers.
Interesting.
But they were not concerned for themselves, which is this odd thing. They had the same kind of concern that I did. But I have had almost no one comment on the glasses, except for people who also have visual stuff, who also have specific types of glasses for specific vision issues. So in that case, it was harder for me internally and easier for me externally than I had expected.
That's interesting.
And I imagine some of this identity stuff will be harder in some ways, easier in others. I've read that Navy SEALs, before they get to I can't remember what that week is, the really hard week that they have. What'd you say?
Hell Week.
Hell Week. Before they get to Hell Week,
a SEAL.
They basically tell everybody this is going to be really hard. If you want to get out now. And they have more people leave the program before Hell Week than during.
Yeah.
That is fascinating to me.
Yes. Okay. So it's a whole nother rabbit trail, but I want to just make one little point on this because the neuroscience behind it too is so fascinating. And this again is one of those interesting pieces because it's the nuance of there's a structure here, but I can't impose the structure on everybody but it shows the efficacy of, or just the simple power of the thoughts that you're thinking determine your experience of life. I'm not going to go so far as to say that, like, I don't know, sometimes it gets out of hand and says that, like, we somehow like materialize things, you know what I mean? Kind of like manifestation taken to extreme can kind of get crazy to me.
Yeah.
But we definitely determine our experience of life because I don't think that necessarily somebody who ended up, because this is where I take issue, people who ended up in the prison camps in Nazi Germany or in Soviet Russia didn't necessarily like manifest that for themselves. That was a major cultural upheaval. But if you do pay attention, there was very different reactions. Those who rose above, those who transcended the suffering, and those who succumbed to the suffering. And that, coming back to our earlier points about suffering, that's a key point. Are you going to transcend your suffering? Is your suffering going going to be the crucible of your transfiguration, your transformation, or are you just going to succumb to it? Right? Will you live the rest of your life as a caterpillar because, hey, life's good. I rub around and I eat leaves and I don't want to get in the cocoon. So now I've got 2 rabbit trails I'm going to do. So first of all, the cocoon is fascinating because that caterpillar dies down to a single cell.
Really?
And is reconstituted out of the gel of the mush of the dead caterpillar.
This is a real life phoenix. I didn't know this.
Yes.
Wow.
It's a single cell that's left alive. It is not in there just like, oh, now I'm a cat, now I'm a butterfly. It's dying down to almost nothing. And I think it's a powerful analogy of this process as well. And that's why I warn, like, be prepared, because your whole world will fall apart. Your whole identity will come unraveled sometimes when you start pulling at the strings of your belief systems about life and the trauma that you carry. And trauma is a big, like, loaded word. People are like, oh, I don't have trauma. Trauma is way more prevalent than, and thankfully the science in general is starting to bring this more to the forefront. So many people carry trauma that just are not acknowledging it. And thank God we can start to acknowledge it for what it is, because that's the first step to healing. Yeah. Anyway, so the second point, the actual neuroscience behind your thinking determining the experience of your life, is that you are actively changing the expression of your genetics. We can't, and this is the beautiful delineation. Again, like, I don't believe that we just change our circumstances, but we do change the way we respond to them. And so the science of the genetics, I think, reflects this. We don't change our genes, right? I can't change my genes to say all of a sudden I'm going to have a different skin tone, or I'm going to, like, have brown eyes instead of blue eyes per se, right? But there is, or grow 2 inches taller, like I always hoped that I would.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, me too. Yeah, but what you're talking about is epigenetics, where the majority of our genes can actually be turned on or off. Yep. The majority, I think it's something like 90%. It's some crazy number like that.
And and a whole nother strain is then that we carry genetic imprints for up to 14 generations.
Yes.
So another thing that we're dealing with is not just like the genetics of how you look, but also the way that you think. So disease is not genetic. Disease is because the genes are activated in response to proteins. Every gene has a protein receptor. The proteins that are activated and determining the type of activation, the proteins, it's in direct response to the protein and the quality of the protein. Now, what is creating the protein is the question there. And what determines the quality of that? Those proteins are not from the beef of your McDonald's burger, which I don't eat, but you know what I mean?
Right.
It's not coming from your protein shake. It's coming from your brain.
Yeah.
Your brain is releasing proteins at milliseconds in direct response to the quality of thought that you are thinking.
Yeah, I'll share a quick study about this that I found fascinating. They did this study on rats, and they gave rats a cherry. And then some of the rats, they electric shocked when they got close to the cherry. 7 generations of those rats' kids were afraid of cherries.
Yeah.
And this is talking about the activation. What did I inherit in my DNA? Right. What's activated? What fears are from previous generations that had nothing to do with me? But also, and they didn't do a study on positive things, because I'm sure that'd be a very difficult study to figure out how to do. But there's also those positive things that we get to activate.
Yes.
Yeah.
And each also, like, a beautiful thing too, because sometimes this can sound very overwhelming or kind of, depressing, honestly. It's like, the beauty of it is your pain, your suffering is your opportunity, right? Or another way that I put it is, pain is the path to power. The powerful version of yourself is on the other side of the pain that you are going through right now. So never give up, right? You are worth it. That's another tenet. Whatever you're going through right now, you're worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it because you are worth it.
Yeah.
So don't give up. And we're here if you need help.
I've done a lot of studying in anti-aging. I had some health issues a few years ago, and when your brain isn't functioning, the best place to look is what works for Alzheimer's. If it works for Alzheimer's, it works for everybody. It's going to increase your brain's power. And there's the same basic principle with basically all of health. You find folks who have it really bad, and you do what they're doing to get better, and it'll improve your well-being, and your not just your well-being, but your actual health. So I was able to reverse an autoimmune disease that I had and some other things. But one of the things, oh man, where was I going with this? What were you saying before this?
Just not giving up, right?
Right.
Going through pain
so your body,
to find your power.
Your body, the best anti-aging, so people who want to live a long time, almost all of the advice comes down to doing things that are hard. So cold showers, cold therapy, for example, fasting. These are things that tell your body life is hard. Your body then kills cells that are underperforming and replaces them with high-performing cells.
Wow.
But if life is easy, it doesn't ever kill the underperforming cells. So your body accumulates all of these underperforming cells.
Wow.
So if you want to live a long, healthy life, you have to continuously do things that tell your body you're in danger. Basically, the fasting, working out, for example, right? Forcing your body to kill off the underperforming cells because it thinks it's going to die if it keeps them.
That is so fascinating.
That's how you achieve health. And that's kind of what I hear you saying here as well.
It is. So, I mean, I think that's a perfect just summary of kind of the unconscious work, right? The internal breakthrough work, which is really the core of all my work with clients. It is just that it's the same kind of weeding the garden, right? It's the same thing of just putting your belief systems under pressure, just like those cells are being put under pressure. Because otherwise, when life is easy and you don't have to struggle, and that's the beauty of setting yourself like, okay, which is why it's easy for entrepreneurs to see the need for this, is because we're usually trying to achieve the next level. Yeah. When you're trying to achieve the next level, you're putting yourself under pressure. That pressure creates diamonds, but it also can crack you, right? What it should crack, the opportunity is for it to crack those limiting beliefs, those that are holding you back, because those are the underperforming cells that are stored within your deep unconscious mind, which is 95% of our life. Yeah. Most of our activity through the day is just unconscious, subconscious, right? So it's that ability to dig deep into the subconscious, which is right. I used to clean out septic systems. I think it can be worse.
That's hard. Yeah, absolutely.
Get your boots on. Because it ain't going to be pretty, right? But dig deep down in there to identify. But the beauty is pressure. It's almost like frequency, right? It's like magnetic frequency. It brings up the thing that's the resistance. Yeah. But the mistake is to increase resistance, which is the classic tenet of jujitsu. I resist more. I'm giving you my arm to bar, and put me in a chokeout. Yep. Right. So a lot of times it's just, which is kind of the problem with 75 hard and all of that, is to increase resistance. I'm confident. No, I'm not. I'm confident. No, I'm not. Right. Instead to go deep and realize, well, what is the root of this? How can I resolve this? Because this is actually again, it's just this is the opportunity. This limitation right now will become a strength once it's resolved and transmuted.
Yeah, and I'm hearing some of these limits as well. Physically, it is possible to work out too much. And so what doesn't make you stronger, or what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, is not 100% correct. Yep. It is correct if you're within the right limits. But if there are things that might not kill you that will make you weaker.
I've had some of those things happen. Yes, I can attest to that. Right?
Yeah. So it is there's a certain level of moderation, but
absolutely.
I know that it's getting late for you. And so I also want to get to my last question here. Unless you got any other thoughts on that one.
No, it's a very valid point, because there comes with anything, there's always a cycle. And if you don't have a cycle of rest baked into this process, you're just going to burn yourself out on mindset work, just like you could on anything else. Right. And I'm an addictive person, so I can attest to that.
Yeah, we can get addicted to hard things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's just take a break, go sit by the beach for a little bit, and and let it soak in. That's the beauty. It's just like when you're working out. You're not gaining when you're working out. You're gaining while you're recovering.
Exactly. So and if you don't give yourself room to recover, you don't gain. There's fascinating studies on muscle mass increase and decrease. And your muscle mass decreases if you work out too much. Yes. You have to have rest in order to gain muscle mass.
Yep. So fascinating.
All right. So my last question is, how do we measure success? Coaching, I mean, we've covered a lot today. And if we're talking about executive coaching for entrepreneurs, I think I could hear a lot of possible options here. How much money is this going to make me? But the problem with that is one of the options that you'd said here is, what if somebody started the wrong business? So maybe they have to get out of the business.
Oh yeah.
So what does this mean for, how do we measure this? What do we expect out of coaching? How do we know that it's working?
So that's right. That's I love it. So because sometimes somebody can see short-term gains with long-term loss. That's the problem. Back to what I was hinting at with the idea of drink a Red Bull, get a high, and then crash. We might be able to get you a little boost in your business right now, but if it's the wrong business for you, right, then you're just going to burn out inevitably. That's a lot of these weekend transformation seminars. Everybody's on a high for about 2 weeks, and then it drops out. The bottom dumps out, and they're worse off than before, usually. Right? It's like lottery winners. We can get you a win, but can you sustain it? So really, the question of, I think success is somehow measured in sustainability. Which comes down to it's a hard one, because it's a hard question to quantify the answer to. And I've seen coaches I've struggled with that question a lot, because I've tried to quantify my work, and that's why I've done a lot of strategic development, just like sales and marketing coaching, because I just wanted quantifiable. If we can just get you this much, then of course then there's ROI on your fee with me, and it all makes sense, and it's an easier sell. So I've actually talked myself out of my passion in the past because I wanted to quantify. I don't know how to quantify this, but I'll tell you what, when you experience it, you damn well quantify, how to quantify it once you've gone through it and you tap into a deeper part of yourself. And it might mean that your business falls apart. I'm just being, not often, right? I'm not, let's just say most of you are not going to start, ditch your business because you realize, oh, this is actually the main thing holding me back in life, but it could happen.
And there could be exits.
I would hope that it does, so that you can find the freedom that you need. Sorry.
No, I was saying that there could be exits that don't necessarily mean it's falling apart. You could sell it.
Absolutely.
Things like that. But
absolutely. And if it's happening with alignment, which is the other thing that and this is a statement of, it's fascinating what a statement of faith this is. But if it's happening with alignment, which is my faith, right? I believe this, right? The aligned path is the right path, and it will be, you will be supported peacefully. So I think really the quantification comes down to peace. It was actually like that experience you were talking about earlier, that hard decision that gave you peace.
Right.
Because before that, it was which I know that feeling too, of holding on to things that we're rationalizing. And I'm like, yeah, but if I just get there, then all my problems will be solved. And then you just get there and everything's worse and you want to shoot yourself, right? So if you're operating with conflict constantly, so the real quantification is still it's still vague. Let's be honest. My opinion on my own quantification is that I feel vague, but I really do feel like the difference is going from a state of constant, grinding conflict and frustration to a state of peace and a state of harmony, which is really peace within yourself. Make peace with yourself, and heaven and earth will make peace with you. It's a quote from St. Isaac the Syrian.
I like that. And I think also that when we are at peace, it's not a straight line to get there. And to get to the next level of success like you're talking about. But when we're at peace, we're no longer wrestling with ourselves on that journey.
Right.
We get out of our own way.
You're working, not just that, but you're actually working with yourself.
With yourself,
you know? There's another beauty, get out of your own way. Absolutely. I agree with that statement. But I think it also matures into you're actually working with yourself.
With yourself.
Because then you're in alignment. You're in alignment with two things: your purpose and yourself.
Right.
And those two things come together. Yourself is designed to achieve your purpose.
Yep. Yeah.
That's everything amazing. Else will be much harder work. It'll feel harder than it needs to be, because it is. So if everything feels harder than it needs to be, give me a call.
Yeah. And you're not going to be able to make the progress that you're after if everything feels harder than it needs to be. Yeah. So speaking of giving you a call, how do people get in touch with you if they're like, man, this is exactly what I need?
You're like, oh man, I want to suffer.
Yeah.
I listen to this podcast and I'm ready to suffer.
Right.
Because I know that I'm worth it. Yes. If you're one of those, then reach out to me, unshakable.pro.
Unshakable.pro. Great.
Yeah, I'm always making sure that at least redirects somewhere. I'm not the tech guy. Alexander is.
Yeah.
But man, I'm always trying to make sure that redirects you to at least somewhere. Or you can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, something like that. I'm always under PL himself.
Okay. PL himself. We'll put some links in the show notes and on the show page as well.
Sweet.
Well, thanks for being here, Peter. This has been an excellent conversation, and we're going to have to do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Clear Brand Academy podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. If you liked this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to outsource your marketing to our team, go to clearbrand.com.